Hey, health students, welcome back. We're going to talk through chapter 18.1 here today. Be the next screen-o-matic lesson, Larson's lecture for chapter 18.1. We're going to talk about the changes during adolescence and puberty, not only physical changes, but also some of the emotional and cognitive changes as well, too. So adolescence begins with puberty as a person starts to mature physically, emotionally, and mentally. And that's kind of the biggest thing to think about here to start off with is we all know about the physical changes. We've experienced those or are experiencing those right now. But the other thing to start to think about is the emotional changes that are taking place and even the mental changes that are taking place as well, too. So adolescence begins moving toward adulthood during puberty. After infancy, adolescence is the second fastest period of growth, not only physically, but mentally. Thinking about our cognitive development as well, that there's so much that's going on at that period of time. We talked about before in infancy, if there's a time where someone could learn to speak a new language, where they're going to soak in the most information, that's probably the most valuable time and the biggest time of growth physically and emotionally and cognitively. But now the second most is during our adolescent time or puberty time. Okay, adolescence is a time of many changes as well as challenges.
Adolescence, the period between childhood and adulthood.
Okay. So a time of changes, we talked about this already. There's physical growth, there's voice changes, and the body begins to fill out in more ways than one. Puberty usually begins sometime between the ages of 12 and 18.
Puberty, the time when a person begins to develop certain traits of adults of his or her gender.
Hormones are things that start to really kick in, and these are chemical substances produced in glands that regulate many of the body's functions and create changes that affect a teen during puberty. So that's a lot of what's engaging these physical, mental, and emotional changes are the hormones that are being released during this time period. Okay? During puberty, sex characteristics develop. Sex characteristics are traits related to a person's gender. Primary sex characteristics relate to the production of reproductive cells or gametes. Okay, the onset of these changes indicates sexual maturity and the ability to reproduce. Okay, the male gametes are the sperm cells that are being developed. The production of sperm by the testicles begins during puberty or at time of puberty. Okay, the female gametes are the eggs or the ova. At birth, a female's body contains all the eggs she'll ever produce in her lifetime. The eggs mature during puberty, though, with the onset of ovulation. Okay. In any group of teens, a variety of body sizes and shapes exist. Growth rates vary from person to person, so the physical changes aren't always exactly the same for each person during these time frames. Some people develop and change sooner. Some people develop and change later. Okay, some of the physical changes that are taking place, you've got females and males. With females, breasts develop, waistlines narrow, hips widen, body fat increases, and menstruation starts. In males, facial hair starts to appear. As years go on, as testosterone increases, gets more and more facial hair and hair in more parts of the body. Voice deepens, shoulders broaden, muscles develop, and hairline begins to recede. In both male and female, body hair appears. All permanent teeth grow in, and perspiration starts to increase. Okay, so those are some of the physical things that take place, but now thinking about some of the mental and emotional changes that take place. Cerebrum continues to develop during adolescence, increasing memory and cognition.
Cognition, the ability to reason and think out abstract solutions.
Okay, so not only are we developing physically, but mentally, we're starting to think through things. Through puberty, we start to develop the ability to problem solve a little better. Okay, and this is an area you probably want to spend a little bit of time reading through this particular slide, but they'll talk about the cerebellum, part of the brain, the amygdala, the frontal cortex, and the corpus callosum. These are different areas of the brain that have just started to develop and use their function a little bit more during the time of puberty. Spend a little bit of time taking a peek at this particular slide. You can read through each of those areas of the brain. Okay, during adolescence, you're going to learn to anticipate consequences of particular actions. Think logically, understand different points of view. Most adolescents begin to search for meaning, for value, and purpose in life, and they start to find a sense of self. Accomplishments in adolescence. Adolescents will develop independence, find their identity, and establish their personal values. You begin to establish career goals. You'll find that practicing healthful behaviors is smart, responsible behaviors. You'll start to learn that. It's going to help you achieve your goals if you choose to do those things. Okay. Accomplishments during adolescence. Emotional and psychological independence. Start to develop a personal value system. You start to develop vocational goals or goals for the future. You start to develop control over your behavior. And again, thinking a little bit more about some of the consequences of your actions. Okay, so lots of development taking place. And I think some of the things that we think the most about when it comes to development are the physical changes that take place. And very important part of the development process are the physical changes, but really important to understand some of the cognitive changes and some of the emotional changes that are taking place. So really kind of a big development time for people during their lifespan. Like we said, that infancy is a time where is the best time to learn and the most development taking place, and the second most developmental phase is adolescence. Peace.